Instead of focusing on a subject on the page, I want you to look at how it is constructed. The way this image was built goes against almost every fundamental rule of traditional art instruction. If you've ever taken a formal drawing class, read a foundational art book, or watched some of my art tutorials, you have heard the exact same golden rule repeated endlessly. Always work from general to the details. You are taught to block in the big shapes first. Map out the overall envelope of the subject. Drop in the center line and perfectly calculate the global proportions before you even dare touch a single internal detail. This is a standard, safe, and logical advice, and it's something that I recommend you all follow. It's a reliable formula, and it's exactly how I and most other art tutors usually teach people how to draw. But today, we are completely throwing that rulebook out of the window to explore the philosophy of inside-out drawing. An inside-out drawing means you completely bypass the safety net of an outer outline or a structural framework. Instead of building an internal box to place the details inside, you start with one single, microscopic feature right in the middle of a completely blank canvas. From that starting point, you rely entirely on relative measurements to expand outwards until the rest of the image is built. You might be wondering why anyone would willingly choose to abandon standard blocking techniques. Is it harder? Yes, absolutely. It is like walking on a tightrope without an informational net. Controlling overall proportions becomes incredibly difficult when you have no outer boundaries to guide your hand. However, the technical and creative benefits of this exercise are massive. This technique completely shatters your muscle memory and breaks you out of the autopilot drawing mode. When you block in a giant shape first, your brain relaxes because the boundaries are already set. The inside-out method forces an intense level of focus on negative space, microscopic angles, and the exact spatial distances between micro shapes. Instead of relying on a pre-made container to drop in details into, you learn to trust your eyes and judge the raw, unguided relationships between marks. It is the ultimate training tool to break out of an artistic rut. Defeat perfectionism. The best part about this conceptual exercise, it is completely universal. It is not dependent on a certain style or medium. You can use whatever drawing tools you want today. Grab a traditional graphite pencil, a charcoal stick, a colored pen, a fine liner pen, or even a basic ballpoint pen. The medium does not matter. The cognitive shift in how you perceive space is the entire point. So I began this exercise by placing my absolute first microfeature on the left side, the central focal zone. When you do not have a global outline to guide you, making that very first mark feels incredibly vulnerable on a giant expanse of white paper. The technique here is to focus purely on abstract geometry. Look at the isolated curves, the angles, and the internal negative shapes of the single component. And I started with the left hand eye. Do not let your mind drift to where the outer edges of the page are, or the rest of your subject will eventually go. Just capture the exact anatomy of this single central element. Since the entire drawing will be built on top of this single feature, your scaling must be highly accurate. Observe the subtle internal values and gradients. Softly shade the deep pockets of shadow to give this first element a three-dimensional form. This single feature is now your absolute anchor point. Every single mark made from this moment will be measured, judged, and scaled relative to this single exact spot. From here, I then moved horizontally to establish a secondary matching feature on the right. This is where the technical challenge truly kicks in and where the brain's internal tracking is tested. Normally, a tutor would tell you to draw a horizontal alignment across the page to ensure symmetry. In a pure inside-out exercise, however, you must look exclusively at the empty, negative space between the two features. You have to visually calculate the precise distance. How many units of this first feature can fit into that empty space? Looking at negative space gaps is an extreme indent. Is the second feature perfectly level with first, or is there a slight rotational tilt to the overall subject? If there's a tilt, your second feature might need to sit a millimeter higher or lower relative to the first. Do not rush this spatial placement. Looking back and forth between the empty space and your anchor feature will help guide your hand. Once you feel confident in spatial relationships, lightly sketch the contour of the second feature, and in this instance, the right hand eye. Once this structural balance feels accurate, begin building up the values of this second zone. If your alignment feels a little off, do not erase it. This exercise is geared towards training your brain to correct its own spatial perception in real time as the drawing grows. If you're enjoying this technical breakdown and want to push your spatial boundaries and grow your drawing skill, smash that like button and subscribe to the Portrait Guru. It really helps support this channel so I can keep creating free, in-depth guide videos for you every single week. With both the horizontal anchor points established on the page, we've moved vertically downwards to find the central nose or the midpoint feature. This phase requires intense concentration because its placement dictates the structural balance of the entire lower half of the composition. From here, you can bring your lines to the absolute outer edges to establish the global jawline, work on the mouth, and also working on the values as you go. You can look at the brightest values, the midtones, and the dark values to create a really satisfying and realistic drawing. If you are practicing this technique along with me today, drop a comment below right now and let me know how you got on. As we begin to map out the final details, refining the deepest shadows, sharpening the exterior edge contours, and cleaning up the brightest highlights, take a step back and look at your finished piece. Take a deep breath and analyze what you've just accomplished. It might not be perfectly identical to your usual work, but your global portions might be slightly different than when you use traditional blocking. Want to go even deeper? Join the Portrait Guru membership for exclusive shorts, behind the scenes content, and exclusive chat rooms to help improve your art with fellow gurus. It's a way to support the channel and your own artistic journey. Check out the link in the description about different membership options. You've drawn eyes, a nose, a mouth, the jawline, and the values without blocking in, and it is completely different how a lot of artists usually draw. The ultimate goal of Inside Out exercise isn't to create a flawless, safe copy on your first attempt. The goal is to challenge your brain's spatial processing, force you out of your comfort zone, and teach you to truly trust your pure visual observation over rigid, pre-planned formulas. By forcing yourself to build a drawing entirely from the inside out, you have sharpened your relative measurement skills in a way that traditional blocking never could. Keep breaking the traditional rules of art, and I highly recommend you checking out this video coming up.